So we should call the meeting of the Donner County Fish and Game Commission to order. May we have the roll call?
Chairman Rob Miller, Vice Chairman Sherman Jackson, Commissioner J. Tuck Steinruck, Commissioner Kendall Smith, Commissioner Helen Ferguson, Commissioner Job Silva, Commissioner Steve Avila, Commissioner Sal Hernandez, Commissioner Thomas Mitchell.
So, I don't know if, has everybody reviewed the minutes of the last meeting, but maybe we don't, oh yes we do, we have some. Anybody reviewed it and decided to make a motion to accept? Motion to accept, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Any public comment today? Status reports. Let's go right into our presentation on the Ditson, please. Thank you for coming.
About the nation's sonar monitoring project, where we use imaging sonars to estimate the number of salmon and steelhead that are migrating up the Smith River to spawn. Next slide, please. What's that? Okay. So I think this is my third presentation I've given to the commission. We're going to start out with a little overview of what imaging sonars are and how we use them to estimate anadromous unwanted populations. And then we'll move into the results of the 2024-2025 season, how they compare to previous seasons. We'll look at a little bit of fish behavior that we've been able to observe using the sonars. And then the last slide is a little sneak peek at what we've seen so far in the 1 month of the 2025-2026 season. So Ditson and its more, I guess, newer version, ARIS imaging sonars. Ditson is an acronym that stands for Dual Frequency Identification Sonar. ARIS stands for Adaptive Resolution Imaging Sonars. Basically, they work like an ultrasound machine or like a fish finder in a boat. There's a transducer that casts out sound waves that bounce off of objects. Those sound waves are then returned to the transducer and converted into digital imagery that plays a lot like a DVD or a VHS tape. You can fast forward it, you can pause it, you can slow it down. I can measure fish with it. We can tell which direction fish are swimming, whether they're going upstream or downstream, if they're close to the sonar or moving out towards the center of the river. The advantage of using these imaging sonars is that they can work in dirty water and in pitch darkness. So we're able to see fish where traditional visual imaging, like doing spawner surveys, you can't do any of that at night or in dirty water. The primary limitation is the inability to distinguish the species of the fish that are swimming by. For that, we have to use other methods. We use the Rowdy Creek Fish Hatchery trap, where we actually trap fish and have them in hand, and we apply the proportions of fish caught in the hatchery trap to the sonar counts, and that's how we produce our species-specific estimates. So this slide here, we have a small video clip taken on the right bank of the river. This is an ARIS 1200 Explorer unit. It's capable of transmitting sound waves out to about 80 meters. The fish you see moving when they come in from the right and swim to the left, those are swimming upstream. If they came in from the left and swam to the right, that'd be moving back downstream. This sonar uses 48 beams. So you see the image quality is not great. They're pretty small. We can throw that sound out further, but the further you go, the more spreads you get within the sound beams, and it'll reduce the image quality. So this is from the other side of the river, the left bank of the river. This is using the ARIS Explorer 1800. This one uses 96 sound packets. So you're throwing more sound waves, you hit targets with more of them, you get a better quality image. It's not capable of transmitting the sound waves as far. This one maxes out at about 50 meters. So it's the opposite here. If they swam in through the left and exited on the right, that's going upstream. So sonar monitoring on the Smith River began in 2010 with a grant from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to Zach Larson and Associates. I was hired on the third day of the first season, quickly became the data analysis lead. Since that time, I've analyzed over 50,000 hours of the sonar data. IT question. So under Zach Larson, the project spanned the 2010-11, 11-12. 2012-13, we had a steelhead-only season where the sonars were put in the middle of December. And then the last season with Zach was 2014-15. After that, funding for the project dried up. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife deemed the Smith River a low-priority watershed for monitoring. We're commonly told it's the crown jewel of California's rivers, which unfortunately means that you're not a good place to spend money to see what's going on. We'd like to wait until things have crashed and then throw resources at it. I was hired by the Tallwood Dini Nation in 2021 with the goal of resuming this project. We've recently finished our 4th season of sonar monitoring. So here we have a map of the Smith River watershed taken from Cal Water Boards. The sonar project site is labeled in the blue there. The advantage of the sonar project site is it's basically downstream of all the spawning tributaries in the Smith River. So by having that single project site low in the watershed, we're able to get an estimate of all the fish that are swimming up throughout the entire watershed. The only sizable tributary downstream of the sonar project site is Rowdy Creek, and there we have the Rowdy Creek Fish Hatchery trap and weir, so we're able to keep tabs on the number of fish there. So we just have a couple of pictures here of the sonar project site. It's at the county boat ramp located off Fred Haight Drive. The image on the left is a Google Earth image. Got a rough approximation of where the sonars sit. The small inset picture on the right there is our sonar project office. A lot of people think it's a bathroom. It is not. It houses all the project components. I've surprised quite a few people that come and knock on the door and are surprised to see somebody pop the door open and have laptops and everything behind them. So this is just another embedded image. This is actually taken on the right bank of the river, but using the higher frequency sonar. So you get a really nice image. This was from October 2 years ago. And a lot of fish here on this one. If they come in on the right, they swim to the left, that's swimming upstream. This was taken in October, so these are mainly Chinook salmon we're looking at. That was a seal actually chasing a fish on the bottom there. I'm not sure if you guys caught that one or not. We'll talk about seals here in a little bit too. So what are our goals of the sonar project? The first and foremost goal is to produce an estimate of Chinook salmon and steelhead migrating into the Smith River on their way to spawn. The second goal is to investigate pinniped use and distribution within the Smith River. We do that by combining point counts taken of animals hauled out at the mouth, the estuary haul-out site, which is that middle picture on the right. And we combine that with sonar observations. So we actually quantify the number of animals that we see migrating upstream and downstream through the sonar project site. And number three is just to maximize the quantity and quality of data collected by minimizing data loss associated with equipment errors and poor sonar positioning. So here we have a chart showing last season's totals. On the bottom there, we've got individual dates. So these are daily sonar estimates. We can see starting on the left, the red line is the hydrograph. So basically we don't have a lot of flow when we put the sonars in. We team up with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We start diving the lower river in August to see when salmon and steelhead start showing up because we know that they're around before we get those first rain events. It's hard to see from here, but you can see that first spike in the daily estimates. There's a really small increase in the hydrograph right there, and we got over 1,000 fish on that day, just one small little bump. Then as we move along to the right, you see that huge spike. That was on October 27th of last year, the first significant increase in river flows. The daily estimate for that day was 3,585, which is a fantastic. That's our single largest daily estimate produced across all seasons of sonar monitoring. So it was a really good day. The day after it was just over 1,800, which became the second largest daily estimate. So it was a really good year last year for Chinook salmon on the Smith. Moving to the right from there, we get into December, typically a slow time. It's kind of the in-between time between Chinook salmon and steelhead. And as you move further and further to the right, we see there, the hydrograph is going crazy with the storm events. The steelhead don't respond in the same way with Chinook. They come in slow and steady over a longer period than what we see with the Chinook. So here's the actual estimates that we produced for last year. The 2024-2025 Chinook estimate, 27,427, largest single season estimate that we've had for Chinook salmon. If you look in the middle column there, you see the average estimate, 17,238. So literally 10,000 fish more than the average. On the bottom there, we have the steelhead apportion estimates, 7,689. It's below the average estimate. The average estimates were buoyed up by the early years when the project was under Zach Larson. We had a larger steelhead population then, and we'll look at that here in just a second on the next slide. It gives us estimates across the years. So how does last year compare to previous years? It compares pretty well. As I said, the Chinook salmon estimate was the largest by almost over 4,000 right there. Steelhead, that 7,689 is the best steelhead estimate that we've had with the project under the nation's management. So the steelhead population is trending in the right direction, but we're still not back to where we were in the 2010 to the 2015 timeframe. On the bottom there, we have the same data, just in a chart format. Sometimes it's easier to see than looking at numbers. So run timing, when are these fish actually coming in? This is a little schematic I came up with. If you start on the left, you see each season there. The first blue vertical line is when we've reached 25% of what that season total estimate looks like. So you see it's generally sometime in that second to third week of October. The middle bar represents the 50th percentile, and then the far right, that's the 75th percentile. The red line on the top is the average across all seasons. So as a fisherman, you look at this and you say, if I was going to be on the Smith River for 2 weeks, if I had to travel here, that's when you want to be here, because we see 25% to 75% occur over, a 1 month period. You'd probably want to be towards the middle of that. So it's a nice little graphic. Here we have the same thing for steelhead. Again, steelhead run timing is spread out a little further, so we see the peak kind of across a larger time frame. But basically, yeah, the month of January would be the time you would want to be here if you were coming up here to fish for steelhead. So now we're going to move into just a little bit of the fish behavior stuff that we've looked at. The next couple slides have data that is it's cumulative across all seasons, but these are seasonal trends that we see every season. So on the left, we have Chinook migration by hour of day. So you can see that big negative number there. This is what I refer to as like the musical chairs effect. So early in the season or during low water events, salmon will swim up out of the Bailey hole, which is just downstream of the project site. If you're not familiar, it's a 100 to 200 yard long hole that is about 20 feet deep. So fish will sit down there in the middle of the daytime, and then when the sun drops behind the tree line and we move into darkness, you'll see them come streaming out of that hole. The negative number is what happens in the morning. So when the sun comes up, anybody that's up above the project site, which you have a riffle and then Baldwin Flat at shallow water, they don't want to be there. So they come screaming down river, and that's where you get that negative number, because they've been going up in the evening. Some of them go back and forth all night. And then that first, between 7 or 8 in the morning, they turn around and scream back down river that next day, unless we get a rain event. That leads to different behaviors. The overview is that Chinook salmon preferred to move in either darkness or low light periods. And we see that even when the water's up, there's a lot of fish movement at night during the Chinook apportioning period, which is basically September through the middle of December. On the right-hand side, with steelhead, they don't show a preference for darkness. They actually show a preference for late afternoon. So now we have fish movement by riverbank. Because we're running 2 sonars, we're able to see kind of fish migration habits where they're moving in the river. Early in the season, the orange line is the right bank, so that's the boat ramp side. When the water's low, salmon prefer to move in the thowwag, which is the deepest part of the river if you were to do a cross-sectional profile. In the blue there, we have the left bank, so that's the side of the river that we access through the Alexander property. And you can see that blue line dips negative. So what we see, and we've been seeing in the month that the sonars have been in again this year, the salmon will swim upstream on the right side, the deeper side. Some of them peel off and they swim downriver on the left side. So that's how we end up with the negatives there. The peak run of Chinook generally will come in on the right side. Once we get to a certain flow, we'll see that the preference for riverbank decline. If the water's high and dirty, fish are like people, they'll be lazy. The right-hand side gets a little bit more current than the left side, so they'll switch over to the left side. Steelhead, for most of the sonar project history, have preferred the left bank side, but in the last 2 seasons, we're starting to see more steelhead come up on the right bank, and we don't really know what's triggering. I don't know if the riffles at the bottom of the Bailey hole have changed and they don't like coming up the left bank as much as they used to. It used to be about 75 to 80% of the steelhead. Now we're looking at like 65 to 70% of them. so a more even split. So this chart here is the milling rate. So the milling rate, I like to tell people, if you've got a fish tank at home, think of your goldfish that swims from one side of the tank to the other. With salmon, it's can we get out over here? No. Swim to the other side. Can we get out here? No. So in low water, salmon will swim back and forth waiting for a rain event. It makes my job a lot harder because you're counting the same salmon over and over again as it swims up and then down and then up and then down. So the milling rate is simply a proportion. It's the number of downstream fish observations divided by the total number of upstream and downstream observations. Turns out it's actually a pretty useful tool for differentiating whether we're looking primarily at Chinook or steelhead moving by. So as we start on that left-hand side, early season, real, pretty consistently high milling rate, 20 to, occasionally exceeding 40%. Then we move into that middle of December timeframe, and you see that milling rate drop. That's when we're seeing the transition from Chinook over to steelhead. Steelhead don't mill. You can see there it's basically all under 10%. They're determined to move upstream. They don't care how low the river gets, and we've had enough sonar years now where we've seen real low Januaries and Februaries. The steelhead don't seem to mind. They're more athletic fish. They don't move in large schools. They just keep on moving. As we move to the right side of that chart, we see that milling rate tick up. That's where steelhead that have successfully spawned and are migrating back downstream are moving through the project site on their way back down to the ocean. So pinniped movements at the project site. In the early years under Zach, we didn't really keep tabs on the number of pinniped detections. Sometimes they were noted in the comments. Under the nation's management of the project, we've made a concerted effort to track those. And so that table on the upper left there, the biggest thing to look at is that number in the bottom right of the upper left table, 673. So that was the total number of pinniped detections we had last season. Now this is a hard count, so I actually tallied 673 of them. With the salmon and steelhead estimates, I sample 33%, so 20 minutes per hour, and then we expand those counts up. In a previous presentation, I went over kind of the methodology and we did a little quality assurance, quality control behind it. And our estimates turned out real close to 100% sampling of the data. So it frees up more of my time to work on other parts of the project. Just know that that 673 means that there's a lot more than that going by out there because it's not estimated up. Fish movement is somewhat normally distributed where we can expect them to be moving throughout time equally. We don't see that with the seals and occasionally the sea lions because they're primarily coming in after the big pulses of fish, mainly Chinook salmon. The small table underneath it just has those detections by month. So there you can see most of the pinnipeds that we're detecting in the sonar project are coming through in October, November, into December, and then we see a little lull in January and February, and then it ticked up again last season in March. And we suspect that's because the seals are moving up to take advantage of those downrun steelhead. They're pretty lethargic. They've expended most of their energy migrating and spawning, so they're easy pickings for an athletic predator like a seal. So seals in the data, they're pretty easy to spot. They're much larger than the fish we're looking at. They're a lot denser, so they put off a much stronger sonar signature. They also have a unique swimming pattern. So now we just have pinniped detections for the 4 seasons that have been completed under the nation's leadership. And we see a diel kind of migration pattern similar to Chinook. They're moving in the dark through the sonar project. Most of them are coming by early morning or late night. Very little movement there. You can see between 10 and 2 p.m. This is just which month they're moving by. And again, you see that pattern where they're coming in after the Chinook and then tapering off a little bit when they're chasing, small groups of steelhead that are on their way upstream. Steelhead are pretty fast, and they, I think, do a pretty good job of avoiding seals. Not so much when they're coming downstream after spawning, and that's why you can see those upticks nearly every year. It looks like 2023, 24 didn't have that same peak on it. So recording efficiency, this is just a metric looking at how good we are at keeping the sonars operational, right? Last season, we got an efficiency of 92.4%. That's below the average of 93.4%. And I can go into why. So if you look at the bigger chart on the bottom there, this is data loss by loss type. So there's basically 2 ways we lose data. It's either due to network errors, power outages, or equipment malfunctions, or it's due to high water that necessitates the removal of the sonars. So in the early years under Zach, you can see the data loss is pretty evenly split between the 2 types. And as you move across to the right, you see that the blue bars now are towering over. That's data loss because the river got too high. Our left bank access through the Alexander's property becomes a side channel of the river when the river gets up to about 23.5 feet. So we're pretty proactive at getting the sonars out of harm's way before that becomes an issue. Our contractor that built the remote solar setup and the network components is pretty picky and really wants us to not risk his equipment. So we've kind of held through with that through all year. So the data loss you can see now is due to high water, but we managed the project the same back in the Zach Larson years. And then the little pie chart there just shows it breakdown data loss by bank, either right bank or left bank, and then by data loss type, either high water or network power. So it's mainly that left bank that the access road becomes an issue. We can run the sonar on the right bank up to about 26 feet, which, monitor stage on the Smith River for flow events is like 27 feet. So we can have it in a really big flow on the right bank. And what we've seen is fish movement basically stops under those high flows. They're not looking to work any harder than they need to. They tuck up into the bushes and wait for things to calm down and the flows to peak and start to recede before they start moving again. So we have come up with a couple different ways to estimate what may have occurred when the sonars were out. And this is one that I have been hesitant to do because we don't really know when those high flow events, and the best guess I have is that high water data loss is not created equal. When we pull the sonars and the river's at 22 feet, I catch steelhead when the river's at 22 feet. So I know that they're still moving then, but when we get up to those upper flows, 25 feet plus, it's hard to want to put a number on how many fish are going by because we don't have the data to back it up. It's real easy to come up with ways to estimate the data loss due to network and equipment malfunctions and power outages because those aren't going to affect fish movement. So we just take a weighted average of the period of time that was lost from the day before and the day after, and it gives you a nice number to interpolate what likely had transpired while the sonars were down. So on the left, we have our Chinook. On the right, we have our steelhead estimates. And you can see on the right there, steelhead estimates are added on in a significant fashion by coming up with this little exercise for estimating the periods of data loss. So these are just a couple more embedded videos here. This is a sturgeon. This one was taken using a high frequency sonar. That was about a 6-foot long sturgeon. This was from 2 years ago. I think that year we had about 30 sturgeon that we saw moving through the sonar project. Mainly in the spring. This last year, we only had 2, and I know that there was approximately 40 sturgeon in the Smith. We pulled the sonars out on March 27th last year, so they either came through in the 40-minute down period where I wasn't analyzing that data, or more of them came in later in the spring. And in talking with some of the folks that do work down on the Klamath, a lot of their fish are coming in the springtime. They come up and spawn. Depending on the flow, and apparently there's 2 different strategies. Some of them come in, they spawn right away, and they turn and leave. Some of them come in, they spawn, and they will stay in river until the fall, and that's what we have seen on the Smith. The South Fork Gorge, Tinker's Hole, if any of you guys are familiar, has been getting steady runs of sturgeon in the last several years. 2 years ago, they weren't there. There were some in the early hole, but this year, a couple of friends of mine dove it, and there was like 36 of them in there, which is a pretty impressive sight to see in the clear waters of the Smith. I'm not sure if they are eating. I had been told by someone off the Klamath that they're basically just waiting it out and they're depleting their energy reserves, and that fresh run green sturgeon on their way up to the spawning grounds bring a lot of fat. They said it's like a real dark brown layer, and that if you catch one and we can't harvest them, but harvested sturgeon that are leaving in the fall, that fat content is gone. So they're probably, just like a salmon or steelhead on their spawning runs where they stop actually feeding and processing, they're just kind of hanging out and waiting. And I think with the sturgeon and the Smith, they're waiting for better flows to get back out again. When they make it up that far in the South Fork, if you're still there in June or July, there's a lot of skinny riffles to get back downstream. This last video here, the other one was just otters. They're kind of neat because they're on the interface of air and water, and they trap air bubbles in their fur as they swim up to the surface and dive down, and it sheds like a little tracer effect. So this is the sturgeon on the lower frequency sonar. That sturgeon is about the same size as the one before, so the difference isn't in the size of the fish, it's just in the equipment that was used that actually observed that fish. So this is where I go into how our project is the best we can do, but it's got problems. So observer bias, like I said, I've looked at a literal ton of this data. Absolutely, I'm going to make errors. Some of these files, I looked at a file last Thursday and had 285 fish swim up and like 65 swim down. So there's going to be error in there. Like you can't claim perfectness in counting the numbers of fish, especially when you start getting schools of fish that some are moving up, some are moving down. What I do is I'll view those files several times and I'll take an average of my counts, and it's pretty remarkable that the averages are actually pretty close. So it's pretty good, but we know that there's error in there. Species apportioning. So as I explained earlier, we take hatchery trap data and apply it to the sonar counts. The picture on the top there is of a coho salmon. We haven't caught a coho salmon in Rowdy Creek at the hatchery since 2017. So we're not able to apportion them using the methods we have. We work with a good friend of mine, Julian Walkley, who's California Department of Fish and Wildlife's environmental scientist on the Smith. They do spawner surveys, and so we're able to take their estimated number of coho that are generated through the spawner surveys, and we come through and we subtract it kind of as an after the fact drop. This last season, it looks like the number of coho is going to be around 1,600 to 1,800, somewhere in there. So a significant number, and we're working on ways to incorporate it into our species apportioning moving forward, so it can be, part of the estimates that we actually produce, not an asterisk, and then go in and look to see where we're going to subtract Chinook and steelhead from the estimates that we produce. The picture on the bottom there is a cutthroat trout. We know there's cutthroat trout that are greater than 16 inches. That's the minimum size to be a fish that qualifies for our count. It's another one where you can't tease those out. There's definitely some out there. There's some that are migratory, so they're moving through the project site. There's some that are resident that would spend their whole time in freshwater. It's an unknown as to how many are actually out there. It's something that's standardized across years, so it's not likely that there's a huge cutthroat year, one year, that would really make a bigger impact on our estimates produced. The third one, conservative estimate of abundance. So on that chart on the right there, this is a regression curve. The percentages you see on the vertical axis there, that's the percentage of the river channel that we're actually covering. On the right, we have gauge heights at Dr. Fine. So you see early season, like right now, we're covering 100% of the channel. We're getting everybody that goes by. As we move across into those bigger flows, 22 feet right there, you can see we're at low 60% of what we're able to cover. It's another one where it's held consistent through time. There's nothing really we can do with it because we don't want to throw the sound waves further and degrade the quality of the imaging data. It's also another one where we come back to the fish are just like people. They don't want to work harder than they have to. If you've ever plunked steelhead, we know that in those high flows, those steelhead are moving closer and closer to shore. So we're not covering that 40% in the middle of the river, but I don't think we're missing too many fish that are out there because they don't want to work hard to go up against that kind of current in those bigger flows. So that bottom one is kind of tied into the species apportioning as well, overestimates due to those non-target species. So we know there's cutthroat and coho out there, and we're not able to accurately account for them. It's just, I guess, the nature of the business. Next one is our early season update. So sonars went in this year on September 13th. I had been diving with Julian Walkley and his crew. We hadn't seen more than 2 or 3 salmon until September 12th. That day we saw like 70 salmon. There was a small rain event coming in, so we decided to put them in. If you look all the way to the right-hand side, you see that number there, 2025, 2026, 7,881. We're off to a fantastic start on the Smith this year. There's a lot of salmon out there. It's the largest estimate produced through date for the time period that's elapsed. You can see the middle row there, the percentiles of average, 178% of average. So we had a day on September 30th, the estimate for that day was already over 2,000, which would make it the second largest daily estimate. We haven't seen a peak Chinook estimate occur before October 25th. So we have got a lot of Chinook to go before I expect us to see it start tapering down. So I get the question all the time, why are there more salmon now? And I tell people, it turns out with the ocean closed to sport and commercial, there's a lot more salmon that are surviving to come back. I like to catch salmon in the ocean, but it's pretty clear at this point, after a couple of years of closure, we're seeing a lot of fish that would have been caught when those fisheries were open. So, with salmon and steelhead, it's never one thing, it's a bunch of different things, right? It's death by 1,000 cuts, But by taking that harvest component out of the ocean, like we're seeing a really strong resurgence back in our Chinook. And with steelhead, they're not targeted in the ocean fisheries, so we know that the increases that we've seen over the last several years are not due to harvest in the ocean fisheries. So they must be finding some hospitable conditions out there to feed and grow as juveniles, so they're able to come back as adults. This is just my thank you slide. These are our project partners here, and that's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
You by any chance visit YouTube?
Actually, yeah, I saw the drone video.
You saw
yeah,
the drone?
Yeah, so
I mean,
my friend,
I called my son in. He's a fisher, and he couldn't believe it.
right? No, it's a fantastic video. And
Unbelievable.
I heard about it this morning, and then Jolene with CDFW sent it to me, and then Kendall actually called me and asked if I had seen it. And yeah, what a fantastic display of how many fish are cruising around out there. And so that season update, that was through October 11th. That video was October 9th. Like,
Yeah,
those
and
fish haven't moved through the sonars. They may have last night and today with the rain we've had, but it just shows like there's a lot of salmon to
Well, that's
come.
what Bob said. He said they're just milling.
Right?
They're just milling right now down. But that was high tide too.
Sure.
He said, what? Sandhole. It was. I mean, from way up you don't really see it, but when he comes down, you go, holy.
Right. Yeah, I had to zoom in to really see it, and when you zoom in, then you're like, oh, that's all fish.
Yeah.
and the boats around, you're like, if you're not catching fish and you're surrounded by that many fish, you're probably doing something wrong.
I fished the mad, had them rolling all around me, and
Sure,
nothing.
that's salmon for you. They do that, but yeah, I couldn't hazard a guess to how many that is, but it looks like a fantastic amount. And given that you're getting aerial footage of it, you can't tell how many salmon vertically are stacked under those fish that are on the surface.
So the seals, you're tracking the number of seals on each side of the river. Are
Correct.
you actually tracking as the number of seals increase if there's an impact to the salmon that are?
No, we're not able to make that conclusion. What we can say is that there appears to be a relationship between the number of seals and the size of the runs of fish that are coming. So the slide that had the estimates, across seasons, 2022, 2023 was a down year. The estimate for Chinook that year was 8,206. That's the lowest estimate we've produced. That year there was not very many pinnipeds moving through. And so they're keying in. When there's a good run of fish, they're coming up and following them. Another interesting thing that I've seen this year is we had seals moving around in September. Prior to this year, I think we'd only had like 1 or 2 seal observations in September across all years. So they're getting smarter, and they're seeing that there's an earlier run of Chinook that come in before there's water. Usually we don't see them until we have bigger flow events in the river, because the riffles downstream of the sonar project site at low tide are pretty shallow, and I don't think the seals really like having to kind of waddle their way upstream. No, actually, the 2010 estimate was over 22,000, so that was a pretty good year. I don't know if I can have IT assist me in navigating back to that season total one. Oh, I think you were close. Yep, keep moving. It'll be a boring table with a picture, or maybe just a boring table. That's right. Nope, that's recording efficiency. Yep, keep going back. It's probably. Oh, so 2012-13 was the steelhead only season. So you're correct. Yeah, we actually generated No, so the funding that year that Zach was able to obtain was only to monitor steelhead. So the sonars didn't go in until the middle of December, but what happened is, due to our apportioning methods that we used with the hatchery trap catch data, we were still, or I wasn't there at the time, but the hatchery was catching Chinook past then. So even though it was intended to only produce a steelhead estimate, we still ended up with 400 or so. Yeah, nope, no, good catch on that one, yeah. Yep, yeah, that was just due to when the sonars were installed. And then the first year, the 2010-11, the sonars weren't put in until October 25th, and so we knew we missed a big chunk of Chinook that year. And Zach actually had, I think, about 15 people dive from the Forks and Hyuchi down trying to count the number of fish that were in before the sonars went in. But it's hard to say how many fish had moved outside of even that area at that point, because that's October 25th through basically November 7th, like that's when we're used to seeing the peak of Chinook move through. So that one is, right. Yep, exactly. No, you're good.
So your high flow periods when the sonar's pulled out and the power loss figures that you're estimating and so forth, are you physically adding those estimates to the numbers?
No, those aren't included in the
not
reported
included at all.
estimates. No, it's just an exercise saying this is what we think we're maybe missing here. Just because we don't, we're trying to produce a conservative estimate that says this is how many, and we know that the estimate we produce, the actual numbers are going to be higher because we have those data loss, periods where we're not collecting data, and certainly there's some fish going by, or the overachieving fish that swim up in the middle of the river when the flow's high. Like there's still going to be some doing it. I think that most aren't, and I'm able to actually keep tabs on that, and that's something that we've been working on is looking where the fish are moving because you've got those tick marks on the ranges. So we can look and see at different gauge heights, and I've played with it and done some correlation analysis, and there's a clear signal that, the higher the flows go, the closer the fish are moving to the sonar transducer. But no, those are not included, and there's also how to handle steelhead kelts, so those down running steelhead after they spawn, right? We want to subtract those out. So we have another exercise that we use that we build in. That one's also, you'll see it reported in our annual reports, which we're about ready to put out, our one from last year. They're treated separately. So you see an estimate with that kind of addition of those fish put back in, but it could also be viewed without them. There's a couple different ways to look at stuff. Again, I always try to aim for the conservative side of things because I want to say there was at least this many fish moving through.
So do you put the information in your annual report about, there's probably not that many hours when the power's out. It's relatively consistent, and then, hey, every once in a while you lose power, but you usually don't lose power for quote unquote days. Correct. Usually.
Yep.
And so those numbers, but what about the high flow periods? There can be a day or two when you have a high flow, and you could have multiple high flows during one season. And so you may have, 4, 5, 6, 7 days when you've got no record, right? Is that included on a yearly basis in the report?
It is, and the way we treat it is it's basically a table that presents the number of hours lost by bank due to each type. I don't have a calendar of events. I have run that analysis, and it's interesting to see the high water data loss events. They typically occur during the same periods, like the end of December, that first week of January. That's a really good time to have really big water. February doesn't produce as many, and it's not just because it's shorter, it's across all years. March, we see big March storms again. And I have kind of went into the weeds on this and looked at where we lose the data loss. And with the network issues and equipment malfunctions, it's the beginning of the season. Like for whatever reason, we have to get the bugs out. And so my supervisor suggested next year, maybe we'll start putting the sonars in a little bit earlier before we even see those runs of fish, because that's when we're likely to have those issues that are correctable, or the high water data loss, that is what it is. We have seen a change in high water data loss events, the duration of them as well. In the earlier years under Zach, we didn't see as many events where we were missing 2 to 3 days at a time. We're seeing data loss events now where, the river comes up to 28 to 31 feet. It takes several days to drop back down and get in where we're able to get the equipment in. Even if we're willing to help carry it down that flooded out road a little bit, it's another interesting change that we've seen through time. And we have tried to come up with ways that we can either have a temporary sonar project site that's in a different location where we can get that. The problem is you don't know how long a fish would spend moving from the old project site through the new one. So it's hard to start a program like that because, we don't want to double count fish. And so it's kind of still on the drawing board phase on how we can get it. But we know that it's primarily hurting our steelhead estimates, and especially that end of December, early January, like that's when a lot of steelhead first start showing up on those rain events. So that's every time we see one of those, we grit our teeth and say like, here it is again, we're going to lose a good chunk when we really want the sonars to be in and producing that steelhead estimate. And I've got it broken down. I believe I included in this report, it goes in and groups it by either Chinook or steelhead, and the recording efficiency during the Chinook portion of the estimate is generally like greater than 98%. Like we're keeping the sonars in almost all the time from the beginning of the season through the middle of December. It's after that, the steelhead, you know, from the middle of December through March, where we're losing out a lot.
Did I just hear you say that these numbers are used to determine quotas of fish take?
No, there's no management implication. This is just a monitoring effort. The funding actually that we use for this is actually because of Rowdy Creek Fish Hatchery. So to operate a fish hatchery, you have to have a monitoring plan. And so when we were trying to seek funding for this, you know, we applied multiple times to the feds, the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Fund. They were supportive of the project, but the funding generally goes to listed endangered species. They're not as interested in fish that are not imperiled. And so that's where we lose out on state and federal funds. But it's because of the nation's involvement in Rowdy Creek Fish Hatchery and the permitting that goes into that fish hatchery. Before my time with the hatchery and with the nation, my supervisor, Jennifer Jacobs, worked with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the National Marine Fisheries Service to create these hatchery genetic management plans, which are standard now. If you're going to operate a fish hatchery, whether you're the state or the feds, you know, our hatchery is unique in that it was started as a private nonprofit through the Smith River Kiwanis. It's always been treated a little bit differently, but we still had to get these documents created that govern our programming at the hatchery. So we were able to take that. National Marine Fisheries Service told the Bureau of Indian Affairs that they believe that the Bureau of Indian Affairs should help provide the funding to conduct the monitoring necessary for the operation of the hatchery. So we leveraged that to get the funding to actually do it. So that's the hook, how we were able to get this work done, because the state and feds aren't going to come here and do this work and have made that pretty clear.
Do you have any explanation as to why you think the coho at the hatchery, you don't see them anymore? Because at one point there were quite a number, right?
There was in the late 90s. The hatchery actually raised coho salmon,
we did.
Yeah, I have seen your name actually listed in the documents. Yeah, yeah. In the late 90s, when the hatchery produced coho salmon, they had to return, you know, in the hundreds. And the listing of coho, I believe, in 1998 or 99, looks like that curtailed the hatchery production there. And since then, it was a quick downward spiral to nothing, where now there's juvenile coho that show up in Rowdy Creek. You know, the hatchery just went through the massive restoration renovation project that took the old weir out that was a juvenile fish passage barrier. So we fully hope to see juvenile coho make their way back up in there, because Rowdy Creek would be phenomenal coho habitat. It looks a lot like Mill Creek. Mill Creek is where most of the coho salmon that enter the Smith are heading. So by all means, Rowdy Creek should have a good number of coho moving in there. It's just, what is it going to take to kind of re-spark that population? Does just taking that weir out and providing access to fish bridge that gap? Or does there need to be another effort to actually get some fish and move them in there? And we've had discussions with National Marine Fisheries Service about trying to restart a population in there, because it's phenomenal habitat. You know, there's 14 miles of low gradient, cobble dominated, you know, perfect area for them. So they should be in there. Does anyone else have any questions? No, we haven't used our new weir yet. It takes a good 2 to 3 inch rain event in 24 hours to get enough water to connect Lower Rowdy, where fish are going to move through. I was up there early this morning. My rain gauge at my house hit 2.8 inches by like 7 o'clock this morning. There was a lot of water in town. The hatchery rain gauge was only at like 3/4 of an inch when I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think that we've got enough flow yet, but we are anxious to try out our new system and see how it performs in Rowdy Creek flows. Yeah, yep, it works. You're welcome to stop by and I will show you the manifold system to operate the individual 10-foot sections. So there's 7 of them. It's a pretty slick engineered system. We hope that it will withstand that everything that Rowdy Creek throws at it. Yes, actually I did diving 3 years ago with Jolene Walkley doing the species apportioning dives. It was just above Dr. Fine Bridge. So there's not any record of sturgeon spawning in the Smith. It was myself, Jolene Walkley, and our contractor who does the solar work, and a good friend of mine, Ryan Nelson. We were diving to see, you know, what species of fish were present. This would have been probably in October. And And Julian yelled over to me, come over here, come over here. And so I swam over to him and I swim down, you know, it's 15 feet deep and I'm not seeing anything. I'm like, what is it? You know, I see a beer can on the bottom of the river and I thought, well, it's kind of interesting to have him call over and say, come look at this. And I get about 5 feet from it and there's probably a 6-inch sturgeon sitting right next to the beer can. So that's why he called me over. So we both came up to the surface. Ryan was in his kayak. He had my GoPro with him and we're yelling at him. He's, 75 feet away, come over here, come over here. So he gives us the GoPro, we swim down, never saw the sturgeon again. We spent probably an hour doing a grid pattern, going back and forth, back and forth. They're very cryptic, camouflaged animals, and there's not big rocks down there, there's no boulders. He did not come back to the beer can and we could not find it again, which is unfortunate because that would have been the chance to document it. Looking at the sturgeon life history, they spend the first up to 2 to 3 years in the river where they were born. The size of that individual suggested he was born in the Smith River, so that would have been our slam dunk chance to say, yes, they do spawn here and are not just opportunistic visitors, but we couldn't get the picture proof. And word of mouth, unfortunately, will not add to the scientific literature about sturgeon spawning. We have discussed ways to try to go out and make a concerted effort to find them. On the Klamath, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Yurok tribe have gone out and been successful at, I'd say, trapping the juvenile sturgeon, but it sounds like more you're just blocking and setting a little stream edge habitat. And the Fish and Wildlife Service guy, who is actually the sturgeon specialist, said they look a lot like tadpoles. Like you're going to think they're tadpoles, but you look at them real close and they're all sturgeon. He said, we were hoping to catch a couple and we caught like a couple thousand. But where we see the adult sturgeon congregating up the South Fork, it's deep water and it's fast, and that's the kind of habitat they spawn in. It's not a great place to try to put in a little wing dam because it's so deep right there and so much current. So we haven't figured that one out yet, but it would be something that would be great to see because the green sturgeon, that's all the sturgeon we've spotted have been green sturgeon. There's white sturgeon that have been spotted in the Klamath and in the Rogue. The green sturgeon, the northern distinct population segment, which is what the fish that we're looking at would fall under, they're only known to spawn in a couple rivers, and we're not one of them. So it'd be nice to be added to the list. And, I grew up here in Hyuchi, and it had always been anecdotal, like, Bob's uncle's brother saw a juvenile sturgeon, or somebody saw one in this hole. But I'd say for the last 6 or 7 years, there's sturgeon in the Smith every year now. They're not, it's not a unicorn now at this point. They're showing up every year. Anybody else have any questions? I'm sure you could.
Anybody else? Question?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. You guys have a good night.
Very good. So I guess we'll progress through the rest of our individual items about regular business. Information about federal and state lands. Anybody have some additions? We have a communication. There may very well finally be some positive at the boat ramp in Smith River. Seth Ricker thinks he's got some money potentially to actually put some gravel in the holes. So everybody, I think, has a copy of a letter or an email. It's probably gonna come from Jetco gravel. I don't know when he thinks that they're going to get this grant and this money to put a little gravel in the holes, but I thought it was kind of forgotten since I had spoken to him, but this is a pretty recent communication that it might happen. On private lands, elk, we had our Ditson report. Anybody have some new elk information? Punch your butt.
Sure, that was an elk call that I just got here. So far, I know Billy's killed, I think, 4. He started a little bit later than we did on the south side, and I think at this point, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think we've gotten like 17 out of 20 of the tags filled. Seemed to be a little slow getting going on the rut, but now it's picking up. And then I had a good conversation with Chad Dibble today, and we covered 2 or 3 things. We talked about the wildlife area lands. He was under the impression that things were progressing on that when really they're kind of at a standstill. And I explained to him about the $16,000 worth of tires that were broke on the tractor, and so they can't mow. He thought that the lease thing was in place, and that gets kind of complicated. And so he had thought that Tina had taken care of it, but it hasn't happened. And so he's on that. He's having Kevin, one of the other guys that was here before, look into that. And then I also told him that we were going to write this letter asking about the updated Lake Earl management plan, and that Sean Freeze had put on a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago, but it really didn't address what we were talking about. They talked about the beach sand removal and some projects in Humboldt County. A couple of you folks that watched it, I didn't get to watch it, and that's not really what we were driving for. And I think he felt good from the point of view that we were all very positive when he was here last time. I told him that the elk, it was helpful that the landowners got their land tags or cow tags that they put in for, and that with the increase in the tags, it looked like things were definitely on the upswing there, that we needed to do something about the wildlife area. Just a minute. Need to do something about the wildlife area because we're getting further and further behind. And if they didn't have the leases in place, there were some snafus in that they have to work out with legal counsel. But he's on it, and so I have faith in him. And he said that I told him we had the meeting tonight, and I would relay this information, and then he's supposed to get back to us here shortly. But we do need now to follow up on this Lake Earl management plan, and he's aware of that we're doing that, and he's very good about returning the phone calls and working with us. I think it was a good experience last time they were here, so I feel that he's going to get some emphasis on it.
That's good. You might pass along to him that, they need to spend the 16 grand, fix the tires.
What I did.
And then they need to, because the tractor's new, right?
It is
fundamentally. They could send it back and get one with tracks, same horsepower or even less, and the tracks wouldn't have the problem, and then they could mow.
Well, we've never had the problem that they had with the tires, and I'm mowing the same thing on the other side of the fence, and I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know if they went too fast. I don't know what happened, but something happened, and it could have been a default in the tires too. We don't know. But I told him he can't do anything with 6 flat tires, and it needs to be resolved. It's that simple. But I understand what you're saying, but I've never had that problem.
Yeah, I don't know how they could get 6 on one tractor.
Well, I guess more than one, they put them back on. Yeah.
So they had a total of 6 over a period of time.
Yes, within 10 days.
Yeah, see, I mean, they need to get rid of that tractor because they'll never, ever not have a flat tire.
Well,
Something's goofy.
Doing what they're doing, I'm doing the same thing.
Sure.
On the other side of the fence, but it's not happening.
There's a difference. You know what the difference is?
What?
Their state, and you're a farmer.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
And so they've had such trouble. They've had such terrible expense. It's inefficient and it doesn't work. They just need to get rid of the tractor because they can trade that tractor for one with tracks pretty much straight across.
I'll suggest that. I
That
don't
would-
know anything about yeah.
They could trade it pretty much straight across. They don't have to have the same horsepower, and it probably wouldn't cost them anything to get one with tracks, because they can, if they have a little less horsepower, right, as you know, and they have a big mower, they just run a little slower.
That's right.
Simple.
So anyway, he was very good about getting back and sounded very positive. So it was encouraging.
Great. Looks like we've covered most of those topics. How about
The pheasant.
how about the pheasant hunt? That's next.
I have one more Lake Earl thing.
Go ahead.
Just before I came, I spoke with Frank Kemp about the burning. They were burning standing grass,
Yeah, I know. We could see it.
and then they used equipment to bury it. I don't know if you knew that. That's what he told me.
Equipment to bury the grass that was burned.
Well, after burning it, they went through with equipment and buried that area. I would imagine they just turned it over, I guess.
Well, it'll come right back up.
Well, yeah, but this is what he told me. That's where was the burning actually? Because I didn't see it.
It was right out by where they're pulling it. It was
On the south end of
yeah, it was
Tallawah.
last Friday.
Okay.
So they burned the emerged grass.
No. The grass say this high on the sand dunes, and you can set it on fire. I'm surprised it burned this time of year because we used to not be able to burn it until April after the frost.
Yeah.
But it was set on fire already now, and that's economically that's the way to go. But the problem is the roots are underground. If they put dirt on top of it, it's going to come back.
They'll find their way up. Yeah.
I was about to say they burnt the grass on the surface, but the roots
Yeah, absolutely.
underneath are going to turn and grow again.
Well, he said, and then they buried it. That's what he said. I didn't ask for specifics because he really wasn't forthcoming.
Well, maybe
That's not
they-
actually why I called him.
Maybe
But-
if they buried it at 40 feet, it might work.
Yeah. Well, what I called him about was I wanted to find out what the schedule is for the closures. And he told me nothing. What he told me was by the end of the week, they'll have out the schedule. Now, opening day is Saturday.
We got
5 o'clock on Friday, they'll have the schedule posted.
we got 4 days. No rush.
You know,
There's no sense getting in a hurry to do today what you can put off till tomorrow.
it was funny because I pushed him several different ways, and it was the same thing. You know, we'll have it out by Friday. That was, you know, and with no input from anybody other than the Dune Stewards, as far as my understanding. You know, it's
Theoretically, on Friday, what time will they have posted on the
by
telephone?
5 p.m.
At
He
5:01,
actually said that.
5:01 on Friday, you can phone, find out whether you're going to be able to hunt on Saturday, opening day.
Well, he said it'd be just like we've had in previous years. So the opening weekends, they don't do anything, you know. So they kind of go with that. But who knows?
Okay. So opening weekend's available.
It is.
From then on, don't know.
Then there'll be they'll all be posted. He said they'll be posted at all the you know the launch points and this and that. And I said, well, do you have an online presence with it? You know, he says it'll be on the website. What website? Yeah, that's what he said. I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else have any other information to add?
Just a pheasant hunt. That absolutely went great. I was too busy with a Northwest hunter almost getting shot. And I got out there at the tail end. And I think you were there for a while, weren't you, Steve? No, you didn't get to go, did you? So it was great, huh?
It was pretty impressive. The girls pretty much took the cake.
Yeah.
The girls were the ones that dominated on the pheasant.
How many, there was, how many total pheasants did we have? 36?
Yeah, quite a few.
And 13 got away. Yeah. And then, for next year, what's his name? Enos, he's now some kind of a top official with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and they've already committed for next year to help, which is a good thing. This year they bought the porta potty. The state's going to buy the pheasants again, and we're hoping to expand it. You know, maybe even have a couple of them, and they're going to have it. They want to have it. Aaron was talking to us the other day. They would like to have it the same weekend, the weekend after the fair again, because that's, take it back. It's between the bow season and rifle season of deer, because that worked out really good. McDonald's, they came through and brought breakfast, lunch, and all that stuff for everyone again.
Great. Sounds like everybody had a good time.
It was pretty neat watching. You know, kids were really good. They all have a good time.
I have Chuck. Twice as many Chuck. They did different.
Birds.
Didn't. How can we fail? Native species, ones that got away, actually. Fail.
They're talking about it and maybe even doing a turkey hunt. And Doug Oxford out there welcomes us trapping the turkeys. So that might be on the horizon. There's a lot of them.
There are more and more wild turkeys around, aren't there?
Yeah, these are domestic wild on Moorhead.
Oh, yeah. I always see them on Moorhead.
We had 16 or 18 of them on the porch of the Grange,
Really?
roosting on the railings.
Were you feeding them, Helen?
Watch the traffic. Well, that's why they show up.
Life fails. Owner of them out of the back and go basket.
Oh, yeah.
Went up there, the fishing game showed up, they laid out a rope, back, laid out a net, back into pipes, rock. Net. Then they built the blind, took like 3 months to trap them. There was 300 turkeys. So the owner out there, and we're all, they told us don't watch it. Turkeys all come in, and they're walking around. Girls that were running the place, they put all the corn right in front of the net. If you shoot the net, it'll rip their heads off. So they just let them all walk away. So the owner comes running out, he's mad. Why didn't you shoot the net over? You had them all. Goes over, gets a can of corn, coffee can, and he's shaking it, and he walks out the middle. It's just far enough, they're yelling, get out of there, it kills them. It's killing them. So he dumped them all out over there, and the turkeys are all walking around him. They were mad because he was out there. They weren't going to do it. We over there and you shoot that gun off a gun. Got 5 of them. Most of them were gone already. Then we went up to Pistol River. Got another 75 up there, and the same thing. The turkeys come in, and the girls would put the feet out too close to the net, and they wouldn't shoot the net there. And we got all gobblers. All gobblers the second time. No, we don't want gobblers. Hens. Hunters like the gobblers, Billy Bendon all and I were the ones that were going to plant them, re-hunt. Up Jedco, they took them all up to Agnes. All loose at Agnes. There's already turkeys up here. And we drove way up in the mountains over there, and then we got right above Agnes, and looking straight down to Agnes. We turned the turkey loose, they all flew straight down the hill all the way to Agnes. I'm thinking, hey, two little general girls, you know, and they ordered like we were.
I will say for Fish and Game, a whole bunch of wardens from Humboldt County came up.
Oh, we
And
had
all
quite a
but one of
turnout.
our wardens who had a prior commitment was all there. And, yeah, there were people there with dogs. And they had the launcher going, and then they had some of the more experienced kids go out just on the trails and set the birds out. So that was kind of good.
That's good. How many people have seen the wild pigs? There's a bunch of wild pigs in Smith River. Have you seen them?
No?
There's probably a dozen.
Domestic wild, right?
Probably.
They're not all hairy.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Does somebody want them shot, or are we protecting them?
I don't think anybody wants them shot yet. They will.
Wait till they tear up all the.
They will. Yeah. Well, they have, my wife almost hit them crossing 101. So they cross 101 and come down.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Probably in the Len Goodwin's old property, just north of Flying Bee Ranch.
They probably wouldn't do well in the bulb fields, would they?
Really helpful, and little ball hills, bears.
Will they even eat the bulbs, though? But if they get into the bulb field, somebody's gonna start shooting.
Okay, anybody else have anything else to add? You have either multiple hunters or you are a very busy lady, my dear. Tell them it's after 6 and you're off. Okay, if anybody else doesn't have anything to add, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming. Oh, I gotta have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Anybody? There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have it. Thank you. Thanks for coming.